Okay, excellent. I'm Stu Patterson. I'm a technical sales engineer at Symetrix, and in the background, that's PhysGig. Sorry about that. Working from home has its limits. So I'm going to talk today about multi-track recording into USB. It's a handy little feature that we're introducing that literally is that. You can record directly onto a USB drive up to 8 channels. First and foremost, you have to have the right hardware. This is Radius NX only currently. And as you can see on the back, USB hosts I/O that has not previously been utilized. Now it has. This is where you attach your USB drive for direct recording. And the file format is going to be WAV only currently. So this is where you place a recording module into your design. As you can see, I have one already in my design, but let me show you where it's done. So you go over to the toolkit, and it's under recording modules, and you can see here it's custom. You drag that in, and that gives you the option between 1 and 8 channels. Now this is important, as I'll point out later, and you can also change the name. The default is always recording module, and then you also have the option of separating the momentary record and stop buttons or a single latching button, and I'll show you both. So for a separate, as you can see, you have both stop and record as separate buttons. But if I were to do single, it comprises a single button that does both, and it is latching. And you'll notice that in the design view, the module changes its orientation. You'll notice we have little nodes for control. So with this 8-channel module that I have placed already, I have it set for separate stop and record being controlled by an 8-button momentary module, whereas this one has a single one available that you can control with it. It's 8 channels maximum per hardware, so per Radius NX, but you can have any combination of the two up to 8. So you can have 2 modules of 4 channels, 4 modules of 2 channels, or 8 single channel modules. And there's also a maximum of 8 modules as well. So if we try to place more and then compile, we're going to throw an error. So you can't actually go online. So let's destroy this and get into the recorder module itself. In the module view, you can see that it has controls basic for those inputs. So you have 48 dB of control, what's going in, a mute, individual mute for that single channel, like any of our other analog or gain modules. But down here, we have stop and record and auto start button. Now what the auto start button does, it is only for when you power down the unit or go online. So with this engaged, if you're not currently online, it will automatically start the recording process, or if there's a power cycle, it will restart. And when the unit is absolutely recording, you can see we have a recording LED to give you that visual feedback, and that can be associated with a control number and set up in a control screen if you want. Now, record length and available time, this is going to be dependent on several factors. 1, the size of your USB drive that you're using, and 2, the settings, the file or the format settings that you set for that recording, and I'll get to that in a little bit. You also have status. The status is a good indicator of what is happening currently. So if I were to go online, which I am on another design, and you'll notice that it's saying it's ready because I do have a USB drive connected to the back of the unit, and also shows you the available time that I have, and it's a rather large drive, and it's showing now that I have 89 hours of recording left. I didn't set a folder, but this is where you can do file management. So you can name the folder that it's going to. By default, it's just recording onto your USB drive and the root of the USB, but you can have individual folders. So if you were to name it courtrooms, whatever, and then assign it a prefix, that is the prefix that it will use. All right. Moving on to the record options. So previously I said that WAV was the only format that is supported, but it's one of 2 ways. So you can do one multi-channel file, so it's a large file encompassing all 8, like with this example, 8 channels into one file, or you can separate them into individual files per channel. The size of the files don't change as a group. So if it were 100 megabits for one multi-channel file and you had, 8 channels, then it would be the same amount but in separate files. So it doesn't change the size. The sample rate, on the other hand, this is where you can choose between 48, 24, 16, and 12, as well as the bit width. So, but that is dynamic. So if I were to change these options and go back, it should change. You see the available time. Now I have 29 days of total recording time on that USB drive. So it is dynamic. Okay. Let's change it back to default. All right, and you can also change the file name syntax. So if you want to change how the start date is formatted, like by default it's year, month, day. You can change it to month, day, year, depending on how you want it to be listed. And this is the actual file name besides the file prefix. So this is the file prefix, and these are additive right here. So you can also add the start time to it, and you can see down here, file name pattern confirmed, and that will show you what it should be, as well as the prefix right here. So then sequence, the sequence is just how the like be here right here where it says sequence 1 or SEQ1. It'll either never restart, which means it'll be additive every time, or it will change per power cycle or daily. This is handy in some court environments or some environments where they need to have separate recordings per day on a 24-hour basis. You can also set the maximum file length, which means once it gets to, right now it's default to 5 minutes, once it gets to 5 minutes on that file, it automatically and seamlessly starts recording another file. And that's going to be part of the sequence. And the sync rollover time is simply, it's the time in the prefix. So it can get kind of confusing at times and hard to read if it's stopping at certain hour-minute intervals. So the sync rollover time, it just rounds it to the nearest, which is handy for readability. Okay, moving on, we have auto-delete. Auto-delete is exactly what it sounds like. So at a certain time, it would set below time age, file age I should say, and total size. You can either set it to whatever is in the folder at all, so it could be anything in the folder, or with matching prefix. So it only deletes certain files with that prefix that you've set. And of course we have file age from 1 day to a year, as well as total size between no limit, 500 megs minimum, down to 200 gigabytes, or when the drive is full. We also give you the ability to FTP into this unit and access the files separately, so you don't have to be on site. So if that's handy for troubleshooting purposes or just for record keeping, if things are getting full and the admin needs to log into the unit and pull the files so it can keep recording so they don't lose anything, they don't have to be on site. They don't have to physically go to the unit, pull the drive, go to their computer. And that could be, you can utilize any FTP program. I generally use FileZilla for this, but you can use whatever you want. And this is the admin and password that you set yourself. Default is admin, of course, and the password is password with a capital P. But again, you can set this to anything you like. Okay. So as such, everything here is available to export to a control screen, and I'll show you that. So here's my control screen that I created, and these are all of the elements. And of course, you can export this to SimView. There's a few differences though. I mean, actually, basically one. With the record options, as you can see, you have down here the password and username available for settings. However, you can lock that out. So you can go here, you right-click here and go to User Allow SimView Record Options Credential Access. So if you set that to false, once you open up SimView, with that disabled, the Allow SimView recording feature, once I hit options as a user, you'll notice they do not have that option to change the admin and password. But they can change anything else. But they are limited, so you can restrict access in that regard. Now, earlier I mentioned that you can have up to 8 single channels as well, and why would you want something like that? Well, in an environment where you need individual file keeping, such as I set this up earlier, so this single channel is, I would call it, in a folder, all the recording would go into courtroom 1A folder, and so on from there. So this one would be courtroom 2B folder with a different file prefix. So it's good for separate record keepings. We do have a suggested USB drive because all USB drives are not created equal, and we've found a few of them, more than a few of them, don't function. There's several PNYs that I've tested with that just don't work. A SanDisk does work, and will have, as we find them, we will maintain a list of working or qualified USB drives within the help file. Thank you, everyone.